am so excited to introduce you to one of our amazing Limitless speakers. Ravi Toor is a business coach and a TEDx speaker and a conscious leadership advocate. We were connected a while ago because we were both actively talking about conscious leadership, and a mutual friend was like, you two need to have a conversation. And there was some instant magic there. And I knew that the message that you have to share, Ravi, is so important and so powerful and is perfect for the Limitless audience. So let's start with just tell them a little bit your story, who you are, and how you wound up doing the things that you do.
Absolutely. So thank you for that introduction. Hello, everybody. As mentioned, I am a business coach that focuses on conscious leadership within the leader and the organization. I'm a TEDx speaker, and I've worked with thousands of founders from medium to small size businesses, developing conscious leadership and conscious change within their organization and with their products and services. For me, I started this journey back in 2017. I saw a market gap in 2016 when I was working for a business as a business manager running the operations of the company, a brick and mortar. And what I realized was it was an investment firm, and I noticed that there was a generation that was divesting from traditional investments and investing into socially responsible investments. And as I went down the rabbit hole of what is this, why is this occurring, I realized that it is more than just a need to participate in the good for the world, the people, the planet. It was a surge towards a new way of buying, moving through the world as consumers. And so for me, that became the target that I wanted to focus on. My background is really in all of this, right? Advocacy, sustainability. I've all my life have been passionate about it. And this was that moment where I realized the two lives that I had from the passion and the business world, they were going to intersect. And of course, I went down that. And so what I've done in the time from starting business to now is I developed a proprietary framework that helps leaders develop the conscious leadership within them so that they can run their organization powerfully, sustainably, and with change in mind towards the new type of consumerism and workforce and world needs that exist. And I guess in a nutshell, it's just gone through this rocket transformation that's allowed me to really take the reins and speak to visionaries across the board who really, I would say, more than just relate to this message. There's a deep need, as you and I know, this is where you and I clicked, Ryan, was that there's this deep need to do something different in the business world that allows us to sustain as an organization, to feel good about what we do and what we produce in the world, and to do things that will positively affect generations to come.
Yes. So good. I love that. So let's focus on conscious leadership specifically, because that was what your TEDx talk was about, and that's the framework that you work within an organization. I get obviously conscious consumerism, right? Social impact, but like, what is conscious leadership? How do you define that? And then what's going on in your clients' businesses that they're like, yes, come help me make this change in my organization?
Absolutely. So for me, conscious leadership, the way I view it, is really a change from traditional leadership. It is really thinking from the individual's perspective and how from the inside we affect the world on the external, right? And so typically in business, what we've seen is we make decisions based on the money. Where's the money? Make those decisions, right? And that's been strategic, but it's not sustainable as we're seeing it, right? And so for the companies that exist now, and as we're seeing throughout all sorts of organizations, it really is a trend based on consumers, but also those founders who are moving into these positions that are at a different level of values and belief. And so for me, when I think about conscious leadership, it is really thinking as a whole when it comes to organizational management change and sustainability. So growing your revenue, to managing your team, to creating sustainable products or value in the world. How do you do that makes you feel good? Not just the gooey feel good, the thing that makes you feel good, wake up in the morning and know that you're contributing meaningfully to this world and to the market, if you will, that's going to leave this legacy of you being known as somebody who is exceptionally great, right? It's this level of greatness. And so even when we use these words, there's so many cliches attached to it, but when we get to the center of conscious leadership, it really comes down to very simple principles or characteristics of everything from self-awareness to emotional intelligence to innovation. Like it's a very specific track. And, just based on the research and the market, the reason why this is so valuable and why it's so essential to businesses is it's because, not to continue to harp on the consumers, but this is what they actually want, right?
Sure.
Consumers are buying more and more from companies that are producing good in the terms of sustainable value through products and services. And so if that's not a strategic move, generally speaking, I don't know what else is, right? And then the sustainability of business is what powers everything.
Right. So you threw out words like, self-awareness and those sort of things, which to me, I think of this from the employee, right? The first time you and I had a conversation as leaders, as founders, as business owners, we want to be mindful to create workplaces, right? That harness this, right? So it's not just about what do we put out in the world, but how do we lead and grow our organization? And you said something to me, and I don't know if you remember saying this, and I'm glad I'm already recording as I said this, is you're like, really all we've done as women leaders at this point in the game is paint the patriarchy pink, right? And I've repeated that dozens of times and credited you every time, just in case you were wondering. But like, that's really what we've done, right? Like we want to do things differently. We want to run our companies differently. We want to be more conscious. We want to be self-aware. We want to be emotionally intelligent. We want to do those things, but all of our examples are not that, right? All of our examples are very traditional. All of our examples are very much what many of us left, corporate jobs to become entrepreneurs because that environment wasn't serving us. Can you speak to that a little bit, like what you've seen?
Yeah. Absolutely. So let me give credit where it's due. This is actually a line that came from a client, and this was something that she herself had seen in organizations that were offering business support, whether it was coaching, whether it's strategy, whatever you call it, and presenting in a way that was, we're different, we're feminine, we're a cut that's completely different, work with us. And then it became very obvious that it was painting the patriarchy pink. It's the same version over and over. And so what that really means when we think about that and how that aligns with what clients are actually facing in their business is that way, the way of the patriarchy, as we can see throughout the world now, is built into structures and systems. It is completely the conditioned way we operate, and it is no longer valuable or sustainable. It doesn't work. It's broken. Right. And across the board, businesses are breaking, marketing techniques are not working. We talk about the bro marketing, all of those things. And we talked about that even in our conversation. These things don't work. We need to get to the heart of the matter and really speak about what the issue is, how we can create change for our clients, right? And what I was noticing when clients were coming in through the door was they were being taught, or they were being taught to rely on the patriarchy and just call it different, which wasn't working because again, going back to the consumers, because it's all about business, they can smell it from a mile away. And we've got a different type that's actually buying, being the Gen Zs and the millennials. And what's happening is, excuse me, but I'm just going to be blunt. They don't take bullshit anymore. And we're all in that position, right? And so as the executives, such as the boomers that are basically primed for patriarchy, are moving out of business and leadership roles, period, you have this new level of leadership that's coming on that's saying, I have a different set of values and beliefs. I want to do things differently. And everything I'm being taught isn't actually working in my business. What's happening is that divide, right? You're not feeling authentic in business. So then you're actually showing up, presenting differently, trying to force things in your business to happen, which then actually trickles down and affects the team, and then the consumers, the products, the services, the negotiate. I mean, the list goes on, and it because you're feeling it. And so for me, when I heard my client say this, I realized things really needed to change very fast and very obviously or bluntly. And that's why I've really driven home the value of conscious leadership. You have to be aware of what's happening, what you want, stay in that authenticity and integrity, and then produce the results accordingly. It might take time, but
Sure.
you've built the stamina and you've built the foundation to allow you to do that. And in fact, it will prove to be the most sustainable way to build business with the greatest ROI.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think that that's such an important conversation, because it is, right? Like we want to do it differently, but we don't know what it is, which is why, when I started talking about conscious leadership, it was the first time I'd heard that term. And I was like, why is nobody talking about this? Like this is it. Like, this is what we need to be doing, as leaders, as employers, as all of these different people, the hats that we wear is as how do we create organizations that not only create great products and services, but how do we create places that people want to work? Because like you said, the Gen Z and the millennials are like, F that, right? Like I will not take that crappy job. I will not be treated this way. I will not. And so we have to be really mindful of that. But the only way that we make changes is improving that relationship with ourselves first, right?
Absolutely.
It all starts here. And so conscious leadership really, for me, goes all the way back to, that conversation with yourself. Having you can't be an emotionally intelligent leader if you haven't done that work on yourself, right?
Absolutely.
You can't ask your team to be, self-aware if you're not self-aware. So for somebody who's listening to this and watching this conversation and thinking, wow, I'm new to conscious leadership. Maybe I've heard the term, I've never heard it explained that way. Like, because we've talked about a lot of things, right? It's the relationship with yourself. It's how we lead our companies. It's how we create products and services. Really, like, how do they get started? Like, what's step one in a conscious leadership journey?
Beautiful. So step one is very basic, and that is listening to your internal and external realities, right? Becoming really self-aware. You have to be able to listen before you can create any change. And that is whether it's happening internally or externally in change management. That is the first key. And it seems so simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do because you have to shut out the noise. And so the very first step is to really listen and take a look at simply what are the themes that are coming up, both of resistance and alignment, right? What are those themes that are coming up, and start jotting those down. Pay attention to that noise of what's happening in your life, both, again, externally and internally. Self-awareness isn't simply about the internal, it's also wrapping in the external. What's showing up constantly in your life? What do you want to change? What do you want to improve? What do you want to keep the same? Right? That's where you start. That's a very first step. And it's, again, the simplest, yet the most challenging, and if done, the most effective starting point.
Have you seen this trickle into education yet? Like the higher education levels, conscious leadership being taught?
Absolutely, in different forms. So speaking about this, the TEDx talk, I was actually presenting at Acton Academy, and that was the school that was actually presenting or hosting. And that school specifically is for youth who are, it's a different type of education system, right? Where it really does tap into conscious leadership in a creative way. So without completely calling it conscious leadership, and you won't always find conscious leadership out there as it is, but it'll be creatively labeled. And where it starts is with the self, right? Again, we have gotten so used to shutting down the self. The patriarchy would approve of that and want that, right? And then rolling with the conditioned symptoms, treatments, opportunities, and so forth. So rely on the external, and that doesn't work. So some education systems have started doing this, and Acton is one of them. I would love to say that they are one of them.
Cool. I was just thinking, because we recently had recorded some short form content. And that was actually one of the things that I talked about, was like, they're not teaching this in business school. And I didn't go so much as to conscious leadership, but really that self-awareness and that relationship with yourself, right? It's always very external. How do we handle people? How do we handle the numbers, right? Like, it's never you first. And to me, that's the biggest shift with conscious leadership is you first, right? It has to start with you in that self-awareness. And I love that was step one. That was not planted. I didn't know she was going to give me that answer, but it's very much
it is in my framework. It truly is in the framework. And when we think about even the things you just threw out there about how do we handle the employees or how do we handle the numbers? Well, the question becomes, how do you feel about the numbers? How do you feel about the employees? What do you want to see with the numbers? What do you want? And when you think about the engine of the organization, it always comes back to you. You are the innovator. You are the visionary. You are the helm, right? So how can we ignore you?
No, I would 1000% agree. I think that's so, I'm so excited to kind of hear you talk and bring this to life at Limitless. So the question I want to ask you, we want to keep these conversations short and sweet, but the question I want to ask you that I tend to ask all of our speakers, because, we named the event Limitless. I know why I made that choice. I know what that meant to me, but I'd love to hear, what does Limitless mean to you?
When I think about the word limitless, potential is the only thing that comes up, right? So when we think about limitless, really, if we start to label even what that means, we start to put limits, and really it's just potential. It's a vast world of potential. And I'm going to keep it short, right? Because I'll go into quantum theory and so forth. But the reality is it is potential, right? And the moment you recognize what limitless means for you is the moment you realize how limitless you truly are. And so when we take that even further, it's power, right? You're in a position of power, and it's time to feel that limitless power and access that potential. And it really is a physiological reaction before anything when I think of limitless.
So good. I love that. That is, I love the word potential. Is such a fantastic word. And especially because the people listening to this, watching this, joining us at the event, considering joining us at the event, like for me, that's why we chose that word, right? Like I wanted to make people a little uncomfortable with, because you say the word limitless and all of a sudden we're aware of all the limits, right? All the limits we put on ourselves, why we can and can't do the things, why, even why I can and can't make it to the event, right? Or why I can and can't make this thing happen in my life, or, why it'd be really great, Ravi, to be able to grow my organization and do all this touchy-feely stuff, but I can't, that's where the limits are coming in. So that was just the most perfect example. If people want to check you out, spend some time with you before they get to meet you at the event in April, where can they do that?
I would love for you to join me on LinkedIn. I'm usually on there. It is bumping. So please come and join me in LinkedIn. Otherwise, I am starting up my TikTok, but LinkedIn will be the first place. So come and join me on LinkedIn. I would love to see you, have a conversation. And most of all, I would love to see you at Limitless. It's going to be a phenomenal experience. Give it to yourself.
So good. Thanks, friend. Thank you guys so much. And again, you have to be at the event to dive into this conversation even deeper. So Ravi, thanks for your time.
Thank you.